We get live right now, man. It's going down. Excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
Hello and welcome to Deer Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast presented by us, and I do mean us, the staff of Brew Hoop. My name is Riley Feldman, one of your usual co-hosts. The game 2, Bucks Pacers just ended about 45 seconds ago, and I am glad to be joined by my usual co-hosts, Kyle Carr and Adam Paris. There's nobody else I'd want to break down the result of this 125 to 108 defeat for the Bucks in game 2 with than these guys. I would ask how you guys are doing, but I think we'll kind of get a sense of that in the course of breaking down the game. So I guess let's just jump right into it. Do we want to go negative or positive for the first take? What do you think, Kyle, since I know which way you're going to go?
I don't know yet. I haven't decided. I'm letting Adam decide.
Okay. Well, we'll go with Adam first. Adam, what were your initial takeaways? You came in and just to peek behind the curtains, you said you were feeling chipper tonight. So I'm looking forward to your payoff of that tease before the podcast.
So, I mean, obviously the game sucked, right? Like it wasn't super fun. Dame was pretty fun for the first half. My guy, Brook Lopez, showed out. I do want to note that for the record. I was thinking about Riley every time he made a basket. So I guess my word for Bucks fans, I don't blame anyone for being upset. It's going to stink to have 2 full days off before the next game. But I mean, on a night like this, like where if you just let's go basic box score first. Andrew Nembhard goes 8 for 11, scores 20 points, right? Obi Toppin has 9 points. Ben Shepherd has 8 points. Like in the fourth quarter, Andrew Nembhard is like hitting turnaround jumpers. Pascal Siakam goes 16 of 23. We'll get to that in a second. But I mean, if the Pacers role players are going to shoot that well, like you're just probably not going to win. And I wouldn't expect that to continue every single game. I will say that. And the Bucks role players I thought were pretty much uniformly really poor. I think the defensive rotations really fell off. So I guess my note of optimism comes from, I think there was also some unsustainable stuff here. I sorted for the Pacers. They're a good offensive team, obviously, but in terms of how they got their assist percentage, 76% of their baskets tonight were assisted. And if you look on NBA.com, like the number of games this year by teams where that had that high of an assist percentage and this good of an offensive performance by offensive rating was like 90 games out of 24, like 2,400. So what I'll say is this was a really good performance by the Pacers. They exploited a lot of Bucks stuff that I think they can still pick at in the future. But I do think this could be hopefully like one of their best offensive performances this series is kind of my one hopeful takeaway from a positive standpoint.
The part that Adam forgot to mention, all 90 of those games came against the Milwaukee Bucks. So that was
I'll kick it back over to you two for the rest of the pod.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. You can go ahead and drop off, and we'll see you on Friday. Okay, Kyle, we'll let you follow up with your take, please.
Okay, I will start positive. Damian Lillard, once again, played really, really well. Brook Lopez, as Adam mentioned, played really, really well. Pat Connaughton was solid. So, like, once again, Pat Connaughton in the playoffs, solid. The Bucks' garbage time lineup looked competent. So those are some positives. And
AJ Green, solid. AJ Green, solid.
AJ Green had moments. He had moments. But really, it's one of those where, despite all the shot making that Indiana was doing, especially in the second half, there was a stretch where Milwaukee did get it down to 1 point deficit. It was 79-78. And we'll talk about the culprit of what caused that run to end. But it at least showed that the Bucks were, for 3.5 quarters, keeping up with Indiana's offense and shot making ability, which is a positive because that was considering certain players not doing enough or doing more than is needed So I think there is some encouraging stuff there. But a lot of it did come down to too many points in the paint where the defenders were not, they're just getting burned on the perimeter and letting guys just have a free cut to the basket. And too many of those happen. And that's where I think like the high assist percentage comes from, is simply get the ball to a guy in the perimeter. They can just slash the hoop and get a shot, no problem. Or they make a cut, someone finds them, gets it, no problem. And then in the fourth quarter, especially, just lots of 3-point, like just threes after threes after threes for Indiana. So yeah, not a great game. There, like I said, for 2.5 quarters, it was looking like Milwaukee could potentially sneak one out. But then, yeah, there's my positive. For 2.5 quarters, Milwaukee was able to keep up with Indiana. And Dame was great again.
I thought Chris had some decent moments. The thing that's very obvious for the Bucks is when Dame and Chris are not both on the floor, you have a total at any one time of a single guy who is willing to drive with courage and has enough composure to be able to make something out of it. So the first quarter offense for the Bucks, a lot of good movement, primarily off of Dame and Chris driving to the basket, screens and rolls, everything like that. And then guys moving around off of that action. Chris tweaks his ankle at the end of the first, I believe it was. It does an accidental step on Pascal Siakam's foot or whatever. He ends up coming back. Looks like he's okay. But Chris goes out, and then that offense, which was hanging in there. The Pacers are also shooting pretty well, which would be something that was a theme throughout the night. But the free-flowing offense of the first couple of minutes completely disappeared. And then all of a sudden, what we expected, they were going to throw Nembhard at Dame all 94 feet, literally the entire game. And I think we did a decent job to start to keep getting him free. And the execution on that fell to pieces as the game went along. And all due respect to Patrick Beverley, like he has to dribble with his left hand because I just don't think his right wrist is capable of like controlling the ball. And he's asking to get pickpocketed every single time, bringing it up the court. And it's physically demanding when they have the youth and the athleticism to hound you the whole way. So I thought, just very obvious to me how many of the weaknesses of the way the roster is constructed, because what we saw tonight, like, yes, Adam's right. The amount of possessions that the Pacers were able to pay off with an assist is extremely high, super outlier in that regard. But at the same time, these not even lackadaisical, but just like there's too much of a gap to make up for if the other team knows how to run the right matchups in terms of our age. And then our youth being Bobby Portis, who is my age, and Malik Beasley, who is, I think, a year younger than me. And Malik Beasley played like a complete a-hole for 3 minutes and got promptly perma-benched until the garbage time lineup came out. So our youth didn't show up, or like Bobby looked like he might have it for a second, then immediately lost it right after that. So this was just like a classic. The physical, they're like the matchups across the floor. Once the Pacers started just spamming Siakam, Halliburton, screens and rolls, that was like, it was game over. And credit to Siakam, he's making a lot of tough shots. Not so much credit to Jae Crowder for the guard job that he did on that one, but I'm gonna let Kyle cook on that in a minute. But I guess I would just be a little bit concerned that we saw it. I said in the reaction to the first game, what happens if the Pacers correct to their 3-point shooting average on the season? Now they shot over that this game, but much like game one, a lot of the looks they were getting were pretty wide open. Like, yes, Halliburton didn't get up a ton of shots, but he is such a maestro at pulling the entire defense in and going from there. And like, we try to run zone. We're too old to run zone. The second a Pacers guy on the perimeter decides to drive at the basket, the zone is completely snapped in half, and there's just no reacting to that. So it just felt like the typical Bucks performance we've seen all season. And I'm sorry, but we've run out of games to just burn by like not being good enough. Like, yes, this is only game 2. The series is not over by any stretch. We're going to see on Giannis, but what's annoying about it is, okay, I had to deal with this in February, March, April, and be told that, oh, it's okay because nothing matters. And then, the playoffs show up and we just see sort of like the same outlines of what we saw a lot of the back half of the season. So that's my initial takeaway. Frustrating to watch, obviously.
Kyle, do you want to cook on a few of your targets tonight?
I'm going to let Riley have Bobby Portis for now. I'm just going to say this with Jae Crowder. I have bags packed and airport, and I have flights booked for you and you can choose one of these places, Jae Crowder. You can go to Devon Island. You can go to Clipperton Island. You can go to the Danical Depression or the Danical Desert if you're feeling a little bit warmer. Hell, I'll even be nice. I will give you the opportunity to go to a lovely place that I've heard. It is called the South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands. You can go there for all I care. You can go to Elephant Island. You want to know why? Because none of those places are fucking inhabitable. And you need to go. You gotta go. I'm sending you to a place that is uninhabitable because that's what you're bringing. Absolute nothing. All right? I'm done. I'm done with Jae Crowder. I'm done with all this nonsense. He can't hit a shot. He's brought in to hit shots and defend, and he can't fucking do either. Last year, he needed some time. He needed to be eased in. He was hurt, blah, blah, blah. He didn't play. Maybe Phoenix was onto something. I don't know. This year, what's your excuse? What is your excuse, Jae Crowder? I tried defending you. I tried saying his defense has been actually pretty solid, like good on Jae Crowder. He's defending really well. He can't hit a fucking broadside of a barn, but he can defend. And now you can't even do that right now. So what the hell are you here for besides collecting a paycheck? No. Go to Antarctica. You know what? Go to Antarctica. Go to Marshall Island. Go to Tuvalu. Go to fucking Bhutan. I don't care. Just get the fuck out of here.
A heroic 2.2 rebound performance in 15 minutes from Jae Crowder. It was really, I think we probably should have seen the writing on the wall when we paid 30-second rounders for him. He hit free agency and had to come crawling back to us after looking completely unplayable in the back half of the season. Or of last season, I should say. What's the most frustrating thing about Jae is he plays not like a man who's literally built like a tank, but like somebody who really doesn't care. How many loose balls do I pray that Jae Crowder, a literal tank, would just blow through a guy to fight for? And he just doesn't. He doesn't. I don't think I've ever seen it. I swear to God, I don't think I've ever seen it. And then the game, as Kyle said, fourth quarter. Was it the fourth quarter? I think where it got pretty close. Third quarter, where it got close. And Bobby plays like a jerk off, and then we kind of lose the momentum. And then it's like it goes to Jae Crowder for a couple of threes, and he just clanks it. And it's like, what? And part of it too, like, you know, I have a little criticism of Doc Rivers as well, but what else is Doc Rivers supposed to do with the roster here in terms of options? Like, you can only run so many Bobby, Brook. Like, the lineup options are a little shallow. And I know. I would pray if Jae Crowder could play like the guy that he is literally physically built as, he would be completely worth a lot of the trouble. But you know, it's just, it's so bewildering watching him. The mismatch between his physicality visually and what he actually brings to the court is just too wide of a gulf for me to like really tolerate anymore. But I don't know what the fuck Doc is supposed to do at this point.
Play Andre Jackson Jr. at this point.
I don't know. About
he's not going to do
I'd
that.
I'd rather him play Malik Beasley. I'd rather him play Malik Beasley than Jae Crowder, because at least, hell, Malik Beasley could hit a shot. He can't. Maybe. He might not be good at defending, but he will try, and he might hit some shots, and he could maybe provide you something. What is Jae Crowder providing? He's just out there getting cardio.
He looks kind of scary. He looks kind of intimidating. If I was, unless
you're
Pascal Siakam.
You know who else looks intimidating? I don't know. I
look Gallinari.
So
I think he goes. I think it goes back to the reason Jae is playing is because obviously there's no Giannis, and you need some size to guard Pascal. And right now Pascal is cooking the Bucks. But I think it goes back to your bag that you will be punching now, Riley, which is Bobby Portis. I'd be curious for what your current feeling is about him.
Have you guys ever seen somebody who oversells his pick and roll coverage more than Bobby Portis? And this is something I can like remember. I get nightmares, like PTSD, thinking about him in some of the playoff series on our title run of like, what the F is Bobby doing? Why is he like trying to outsprint the ball handler to wherever it is? So he's hyper aggressive too aggressive in his coverage, and then he just doesn't go back to his man. He does not go back to his guy, whoever, or if he does, it's very half-hearted. And by the time he gets there, everybody else has to adjust to the fact that Bobby's still effing around on the perimeter. Well, like Siakam has gotten the switch or whatever it happens to be. And part of the trouble too is like, I get the idea of, okay, just make Siakam beat you. But then the Pacers tonight had the like, okay, well, we'll kind of let Siakam sit a little bit on the perimeter after he gets the ball. And eventually just kind of instincts take over. Brook moves out to the perimeter to guard him. And this is like Adrian Griffin defense all over again, where Brook is in no man's land, so far out from the basket, and Bobby's the backup guy. Get the F out of here. I know how that story is going to end. They scored 56 points in the paint. Like, we've seen that story all season long. So Bobby has not been a great defender ever. He, in theory, has the effort in the motor, but he's lazy on defense, and he's a little over aggressive in the wrong ways and puts himself in a bad position. And then offensively, again, none of this is surprising. We know what this is. If he makes the shots, Doc Rivers is the greatest basketball coach who has ever coached the game of basketball. And if Bobby's not banging shots, he's on the plane with Jae Crowder to whatever island Jay has chosen from the list that Kyle has provided. And what's really tough about Bobby is it feels like for some reason when we get the momentum, either because he had like some sort of and one and he's going to take the next 5 shots because that's what he does, or his teammates try to set him up. And I don't know if it's tight. He gets too excited. I don't know what it is, but the gimmies, the like wide open dunk attempts that he blows because somebody has a little bit of contact on him. It's like, I just need more, Bobby. Out of anybody on the team, I mean, Chris has an okay game. Dame has another great first half for him. Brook shoots great from outside, and then Bobby just leaves everybody hanging for the most part. Like 14 points, but it took 16 shots to get there. So, yeah, not great from Bobby. And if you run down everybody else, like I said, Malik had like 3 of the worst minutes of basketball I've seen ever. Completely selfish play, and he deserved to be pulled from the floor. So I credit to Doc Rivers for pulling him immediately. AJ Green was fine, but AJ Green is like a second-year guy who is miraculous that he's here. And then Pat Connaughton had that nice and one play that he got injured on. So, you know,
the thing with Bobby that was frustrating, there was a stretch where his guy was at the top of the key. Bobby is just inside the 3-point line. The Pacers get it baseline. And Bobby just does not pay any attention, and the guy just gets a free cut for a layup. And it was just too many of those things happen. And I mean, on offense, it was one of those where Bobby would get it, he would start dribbling, then he would start attempting a spin, and then it's like, Bobby, get rid of the ball. Do not have the ball in your hand. And sometimes he would pass out of it, and it was like, great, good job. And sometimes he threw up a dumb shot. It is telling that as Milwaukee was getting momentum in the third quarter, they got it down 79-78. And then Bobby gets the ball, tries some short bunny that he can't make. Pacers get it on the other end, get an and one. And that was probably like, I feel like that was the big inflection point of the game.
Yes. Bobby lost his dribble. He should have, once he regained it, he should have passed out and reset it because there was plenty of time in the shot clock. But Bobby said, this is my time. He wanted to be the hero, and you just got to be bigger than that. You really have to. Like, it can probably come back to you, but let the guys reset. Give the team like, okay, you blew the transition opportunity. Now reset it. There's plenty of time in the clock. So,
I mean, there was literally a possession where like he goes up and sets a screen, and then instead of rolling, he just kind of stays out on the perimeter, and Pat Connaughton gets the ball, and you can see Pat literally move his head like 4 different times, like, make a cut, Bobby, make a cut. And instead they get it back over to Bobby, and he does an ISO, and it's just like, why are you doing this, Bobby? And so I do think this goes back to like a clear, obviously we know it's an issue, but especially without Giannis, there's a huge structural issue with the Bucks offense where I actually do think we need to not that we need a ton of it, but like we just need AJ Green running around a little more because at least he has a slight bit of motion to him. But like you have Bobby, maybe he'll set a screen. He was at his best tonight when he was setting a screen, high screen, and rolling. And he just seemed insistent on not rolling as much as he should. Like you could see him doing like pseudo Giannis stuff a few times when you get him on the roll, but instead he just wants to go ISO. And then Chris is kind of going ISO. Brook, God love him, is basically just pick and pop. They don't really have him roll very often at all anymore. And he also had a few bunnies that he missed, which were kind of rough. There were a lot of bunnies missed tonight. If you look, the Bucks were like 50% at the rim and the Pacers were 80. Bucks missed like everything inside the paint. It was really bad. I think.
Go on.
I think that they need to find some way to get a bit more movement. I don't know why. There was a period, I think, in the second quarter where Chris and Dame, when they were on the court, were running like some high either handoffs or screens for one another. And I felt like that action like disappeared from then on. And I didn't totally get that and why they went away from that.
There's a large stretch of the fourth quarter where the ball was frequently either in Bobby's hands or Pat's hands or both Pat's hands and not in Dame or Chris's hands.
The one other thing I will say, I think Chris was fine, but like you can't shoot 14 shots and score 15 points with no Giannis. Yep. Like you got to be better if you want to win the game.
Yep. My final thought before we kind of get to game 3 here. Brook Lopez, I give him a lot of stick because I'm his biggest hater in the entire world. My guy is under siege out there. I just feel sad for him. Like the number of times he is expected to stop the first initial attack at the rim and then also be able to turn and compensate for the fact that his teammates fell asleep on the perimeter. And now like 4 Pacers are all hard charging uncontested at the rim. And Brook's supposed to stop all of that. Like he is completely under siege. He's been under siege all season long. It looked better in game 1 because the Pacers were doing a lot of switching, or they were essentially trying to force a ton of switching and see if they could find like not a mismatch, but like the Bucks make an error off of a switch and all of a sudden they have a nice look, right? Tonight, they were hunting mismatches. And then the second that we don't, the Bucks perimeter defense isn't like, okay, just switch between these 3 guards, then everything kind of collapses and Brook is under siege. So I feel for Brook, really tough. It's been, again, the case all season. Very often we see this, and that is done a lot to personnel and the fact that other teams are able to hunt that out, and the fact that Giannis is not out there. Okay. We try to keep it on 20 minutes. We're at 22. Figured that was going to be the case. No big deal. Things to look out for or what you would like to see for game 3. We'll start with you, Adam.
I think the biggest thing I want to see is just a lot more screening for Chris and Dame in general, because they're just having a really hard time. Basically, the only way they seem to be getting Chris the ball is like really difficult entry passes with Aaron Nesmith trying to front him and making his life really difficult. So they just need to find more ways to get Chris the balls on DHOs and all of that kind of stuff they're running for Dame. They need to get those 2 in action, the same actions. They just need to get those 2 playmakers moving a lot more. I think Dame has been really good so far. He's got to keep doing what he's doing. He looked gassed tonight. That's the other thing I will say. I think in the competitive portion of the game, he maybe had like 4 minutes of rest. Got up to 39 minutes tonight and was pulled with like 4 minutes left. So he looked a little gassed. They need to figure out more ways to get Chris the ball in advantageous positions, because tonight it just looked like a struggle bus for him, and he did his best, but they need more from him.
Kyle?
I would say, Doc, please play Brook more minutes, because Bobby is not it. I also think Milwaukee just needs to find a way to get themselves unstuck, because I think the biggest issue in the fourth quarter was the shots were falling and they could not generate offense. And the times that they were able to kind of get some momentum, it focused on them getting looks near the basket. And I think they got to find a way to make that work, because Indiana made it a goal to not let that happen tonight. And you got to find a way to break that mold. So I think those are kind of like the 2 biggest things: more Brook minutes, less Bobby minutes, and then find easy buckets, or at least buckets closer to the rim.
This is very easy for me to say as an idiot at home. I think you have to try and see and find ways to make Tyrese Halliburton beat you with his scoring rather than the playmaking. That is, again, super easy for me to say, extremely difficult to actually do. But the number of times that the initial action of him driving off the screen into the paint, like into the elbow, and everybody has to collapse because that's just kind of like the natural thing to do. And then it's a swing pass, and an open 3 for a Pacer at the end of it. That became more and more frequent as the game went along because it's hard to keep up with them. So if you can find ways to make him try and take a ton more shots, I think he did exactly what he's supposed to do. A couple of really high percentage shots, like he shoots well, and he has 12 assists, a double, 12 points, 12 assists. So I think you have to try and avoid letting him be the creator for everything the Pacers are doing, because he's just the starting point. He just happened to pay off 12 of his own, probably a shitload of hockey assists in there as well. So I don't know what the Bucks answer is going to be in terms of lineup, because until Giannis is back, there is no other option around. Not a feasible one that Batak is going to go to. But it'll be interesting. We'll see. Game 3 is on Friday, I believe, in Indiana. We'll keep an eye out for Giannis news. I would be really surprised if he goes for game 3, depending on the outcome of that. I think we will keep an eye out for game 4 as maybe the first inflection point for where Giannis comes back. Any final thoughts from anybody, or are we good? Jae Crowder, don't listen to this podcast.
Pitcairn Islands, Jae Crowder. That's not another option. It's a lovely island that has 4 volcanic. It has a bunch of volcanoes on it.
Beautiful. With that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks for joining, guys. Thanks everybody for listening to the short-ish instant reaction podcast. We'll be back on Friday after game 3. Go Bucks.